Hey everyone, I've got my backpack, my fancy traveling hat, my passport, my international driver's license, a little bit of cash. I'm ready to start my ESL adventure overseas. See you there.
You sure about that? Well, what about a job? What are you going to do when you get there? Don't worry, I have some suggestions for you. I'm Teacher David, and this is TESL for Newbies. Before you get to buying a ticket, you should really think carefully about where exactly is it that you want to go. There are many places in the world you could travel to. For me, it was Asia. Growing up in the era of Bruce Lee, I was always really excited about visiting and traveling to Asia. So I started looking at online job boards. Not that there were a lot back when I started looking, but there were some. So I started looking, and I found lots of jobs, but these jobs were always posted in these mysterious places called cram schools. Back then I had no idea what they were. So I decided, well, that's what everybody seems to be doing. So I found a job, packed my bags, and off I went to Asia. Primarily, there are two jobs you can get. The first one, teaching in cram schools, which I'll talk about in a moment. The second one is teaching at elementary schools. I'll talk about that a little later on. Those are the two main jobs you're going to find, and they require different things. They pay different amounts. Lots is involved. I'll try to break it down as quickly as I can to give you some information at your disposal before you decide to sign a contract. Remember, when you sign a contract, you're signing for a year. So you should try to be as careful and make your decision as carefully as you can. So what is a cram school? Well, simply put, a cram school is a privately owned tutoring school. Usually it's owned by one person or often one family, and sometimes it even could be like a mixed couple. For example, a foreigner and a local. They've gotten married and decided to open a school together. The structure of most cram schools are you have the foreign teacher, but the foreign teacher usually just teaches lessons. It's the local teacher that actually takes care of the day-to-day, signing a communication book with parents, dealing with students coming to class, leaving class, that type of thing. Also, those classes that I'm just mentioning, most of them in a cram school are quite small. I've had classes somewhere between 4 students and 14. The largest cram school class I think I've ever taught was close to 20 students, but that's very unusual. Now, what do you need to get this kind of job? Well, the reason these kinds of jobs are so popular is because you simply need your bachelor's degree. If you have a bachelor's degree in basically any subject, you can get a job at a cram school as long as you come from an English-speaking country. And even then, even if English isn't your first language, some schools will still hire you, but that's something down the road to discuss. What you do need, in addition to your bachelor's degree, is a criminal background check. You need to have that. You need to have a clear background so you can get an ARC or an alien registration or registration certificate. And that's just so the school can hire you legally for a year contract. They hold your visa. However, if you just want a part-time job, that's something different. You can do that. This right now we're talking about full-time jobs. And a lot of places, though, the kind of catch-22 is they would like you to have some experience first. This is why previously I've suggested that try to get experience back home if you can. That way you can write it down on your resume and they can see that this won't be the first time in your class. It's not a testing ground for them. Okay, then, so what are your duties when you get there? Many cram schools, there's no planning for the foreign teacher. You just show up, somebody tells you what to teach, and you teach it. That's it. That's the kind of lowest level, usually lowest pay. We'll talk about that in a moment. Other schools, There's some planning involved. They want you to write out a lesson plan. They want you to write out even maybe a weekly lesson plan. That way, in case you're sick, other people will show up and they'll know where you are and they can then sub your classes. Then other schools, these are by far fewer, but still some schools, they want you to have a full plan. So you have a syllabus that you have to create following the school's curriculum. So that's the most work that you could be expected to do at a cram school. Remember, you're still not picking the books, you're not picking the curriculum, but you are making a syllabus for the semester. Okay, another thing that you could do as some schools is they will expect you to do a summer camp with them. Sometimes the summer camp is made, sometimes they expect you to make a summer camp based on the topic you've selected for usually, say, 2 weeks at a time. Okay, so how much are you getting paid for all this? Well, it really depends, as you could imagine, on how much you're expected to do. So when I first started full-time at a school, I was getting paid around $2,000 a month. And that was tied to a full-time contract. They had my ARC, they had my visa, and that was for a full year. And that's pretty good. To be honest, it hasn't really changed a whole lot since then. And truthfully, these kind of contracts, there aren't that many vacation days. The national vacation days, maybe 2 weeks for the year that are paid, and the rest of the time you're in the classroom, either doing regular school season work or summer camp work. Now, the great thing about these schools is the availability. They're open, or they hire rather, year-round. People are always coming and going. However, really take a look at, because there are some huge name cram schools out there. They're hiring all the time. It's a revolving door, and you got to ask yourself, why is that revolving door happening? Why are they going through so many people? Often the curriculum is not that great. It can be the case, doesn't have to be. The pay is often lowest, but it gets you over there. It gets you started. So, okay. So what about local elementary schools? Well, they can be great jobs, actually. Local elementary schools are places where there's a government-run school, and they have an English program that they're trying to include in their school, or it can be a privately run school where they essentially call themselves a bilingual school or an international school. And English now isn't just supplemental, it's actually the primary draw of that school. So they still have all the regular subjects as you would in Chinese or in whatever language is local to that school, but they have also a number of hours each week in various subjects in English, taught by native English speakers. And of course, some of the classes are also taught by local speakers. So yeah, you kind of have a mix that way. So the idea is they're getting a kind of immersion effect, if you will, while they're at school. So what's the structure like at these elementary schools? Often there's going to be an English department head, and that head helps to situate or sort out the teachers that have been hired for the grades. For example, you could have a single foreign teacher in a classroom. Students go to that classroom and they have the lesson, or the teacher goes to the student's homeroom and they have the lesson there in that homeroom class. But the homeroom teacher is not involved. In most elementary schools, either private, religious, international, public, it doesn't matter. The foreign teacher is by him or herself. They do their own lesson plans, they do their own syllabus, although again, the school will set up the curriculum for those foreign teachers and local teachers to follow regarding the English curriculum. So for these, in these kinds of schools then, it's a little bit more rigorous to get a job here. It's a little bit more difficult to get one from overseas. You need your bachelor's, of course, but now, and a criminal background check, but you also now need a teacher's license. Now, that's not always the case, but most of the time you need to have a teacher's license, especially if you're new to that country and your visa is connected to the school hiring you legally. Now, I always mention the word legally because, as we know, with every job out there, there can always be little bits of under the table things happening. But if you've been in that country for a long time, and that country, like here in Taiwan, has something like an APRC, which is a kind of permanent residence situation, you can get hired at certain schools without a teaching license. I've heard of this happening, though it's not common. And I would strongly suggest you don't expect to find something like that when you're looking from home to get a job. Just get yourself a teacher's license. That's good enough. And then some schools, kind of more what we would say famous schools, I guess, they would even prefer you to have some kind of graduate degree. Even though you're teaching elementary school, that's how stiff the competition can be. And definitely experience is necessary. Solid experience, references, that's necessary. So your duties, just do the planning, but now you have to do assessments, report cards, all of the things that are you would expect a teacher back home in your home country to do for students. You now have to do that at the local school, be it public or private. So in addition to that, some schools, they expect you to do a summer camp of some kind. Some schools, they're off for the summer. So you need to look into that when you decide to take a job because salary isn't always the same. So speaking of which, when you go to an elementary school, the salary tends to be higher. However, they also have a graded salary system. Almost all schools, how long you've been there, they'll increase every year for, say, 5 or 10 years. And then they'll perhaps add more holiday days. Each year you get one more added holiday. Or you have to do summer camps for the first 5 years you're there. And then after that, you no longer have to do summer camps. But you're still paid for the full year. So there's a lot of variation in there. But just assume you're getting more holidays than a cram school and you're getting better pay. And the great thing is those the pay rates, they continue to rise, usually for somewhere around 10 years. Then comes to the problem, and that is availability. It is tough to find one of these jobs. It is not easy because unless something catastrophic happened at school, they're only hiring during preschool year season. So say May to August, something like that. And August is already quite late in the year. May, June, that's far more common because they want to get their teaching, their teachers, they want to get that down and locked in, ready for the upcoming school year. So as you can imagine, they're not waiting for that. And as I said, if something unexpected happens, then they might have to hire somebody to cover a class mid-year, but that's very, very rare. And if it does happen, it makes you wonder what's happening at that school that such a thing would happen, or what's happening with that teacher, which could also be the issue. It's definitely not always the school. Very often it could be the teacher. That teacher's got some kind of issue and they just left. So are these the only jobs you can expect to get? No, of course not. They're not the only jobs. But getting a job at a cram school as your first job is almost certain, almost guaranteed, unless you already have an extensive amount of background and you have a teacher's license, maybe a graduate school degree, some reason for them to take a risk to hire you from overseas. So that's number one. So cram school, that's where you're going to be. But once you get here, wherever here is, and you get some experience under your belt, well, then there are other opportunities depending on your educational background that open up to you. For example, maybe you could work at a local university. If you're just teaching as a lecturer, if you're just acting as a lecturer at a local university, which I've done in the past, a master's degree is sufficient. And I've had some great experiences teaching at local universities here in southern Taiwan. Also, you can do something called proofreading. Maybe again, I worked at a local university for 10 years proofreading. I used it as a kind of side income. It was something different from my normal teaching day. I just enjoyed it. It kept me academic in a sense, because all day you're talking to kids. Sometimes you want to kind of talk to adults, and I found proofreading to be a great way. I know other people who've opened up their own school. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes husband and wives will open a school together. That's a possibility that you could keep in mind after a while, especially once assuming you make a name for yourself. So in conclusion, what could I suggest? Well, before you pick a job, do some research. Try to look into it. See if there's a local job board or job discussion forum or even a Facebook forum that talks about that school. See if it's got a good reputation. Try to get your job before you leave home. You can always switch when you get here. But I'll tell you, the stress of coming to a place, not having a job, having to do visa runs because you don't have a proper visa connected to a school, you don't have a proper working visa, only visitor's visa. It's a nightmare. Just do some research, get a job, get here, and then decide if you like the culture. If you like the culture, then change the job in the future if that's something you want to do because you want to make your stay longer. Okay, so this week we've hinted at stuff about education, how that helps you get a job. Next week, 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks, not next week, 2 weeks, we're going to focus on education and how it affects your job. What kind of education is good for you as an ESL teacher? And not just academic education, other areas that can also be very helpful. You'll be surprised, not everything I'm going to talk about is from a book. Some things are going to be from your imagination, shocking as that could be. All right? Anyway, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care. Bye for now.